Greetings, podcast listeners, and welcome to another exciting episode of All Things Thor. In this episode, Tom will continue telling us the tale of how he wound up at Walt Disney Imagineering, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. So sit back, get comfortable, and get ready for part 2 of our continuing saga of Thor and Imagineering.
So, part of my just sharing my ongoing experiences as being a Disney Imagineer, for those who have any interest at all in it. Last episode, as they used to say, we left off kind of with my initial experiences joining the company and leaving Universal Studios. I left out one thing, though, that I think is important for those of you that have or are aspiring to be part of, to be an Imagineer. And that is that it took me about 2 years of applying to be an Imagineer with all the best I had, the best images I could find, all my experiences, my resume, everything, applying. And the application, when you applied, I'm not sure if it's the same now, but it was quite impressive. You got this envelope, and when you open the envelope, what would fall out, as I recall, it was like folded up into at least 3 pieces. And at the very top of this application was a big picture of Mickey Mouse with the sorcerer's hat, and it said Walt Disney Imagineering on it. And it was, you're like going, oh my God, I hope I can become part of this. And you had a bunch of questions to fill out and things. I don't remember all the different questions. I mean, some of them were kind of, typical resume questions or whatever. What is your experience? Why do you want to be an Imagineer? All this kind of stuff. And I always took the time to be very verbose and eloquent in filling these applications out. But I'd send these off, and I'd hear nothing. I heard nothing. I think the third time I got a message back, of envelope back, or got to remember this was a time when email wasn't prevalent in 1995, so there was a lot of snail mail, interaction. But I got a response back that said something to the effect of thank you for your application, we'll keep you in mind, blah blah blah, the all the stuff that is you don't want to hear. But because you want to hear that they're like saying, yeah, we want you, call this number and let's set up a meeting. But it didn't happen the first few years. And I couldn't understand why, because I sent the best of what I could do, and I really thought I was qualified to be an Imagineer. And it wouldn't be till years later that I actually was an Imagineer that I realized, and I won't get into the. Again, I try not to name names unless I'm naming names that I want to celebrate. But the person that was reviewing all of these applications admitted to me that when I was there, they looked back on the files of all my applications, and many of them had never been read at all, or they had been read but just filed away, and the person that reviewed these applications was not, in my opinion, qualified to recognize talent enough to get me in the door. So my eloquent attempts at convincing them that I was an Imagineer and should be working there were simply put into a file somewhere, and nothing ever happened. So I say this because some of you who may want to be getting involved in this industry, that this often happens, and it's happened with other companies I've worked for. That the first person that takes on resumes and looks at your applications and everything, or screens your capabilities or whatever, again, in my opinion, is not qualified to really decide or recognize that you are a very valid potential contribution to their establishment. Some of the people I've discovered that review those portfolios or the creative applications, they worked for Xerox before, and then now they're working for a company. They were hired to be the creative assessment managers or whatever you want to call them. So they don't know. I mean, they're the I think that the closest that they can do is if there's a project that's pending that they're aware of, like if it has to do with, let's say, let's say they're working on a project that has to do with birds, you know. If they look at a portfolio that you've submitted and images and stuff, and you have a bunch of birds in your portfolio, then that's their trigger to say, oh, hey, this person's qualified to work for a company, and I'm going to notify the art directors and the the creative leads that this person is probably great for our company. And they're not capable of looking or qualified to looking at the overall potential that you have, even if you don't have birds in your portfolio, of how you could, really, truly, honestly be an asset to their company. So I think the message in this is don't take it personally. That there's a bunch of different things that happen, and there's screens you have to get through, filters that you might not make it through, but it has nothing to do with your talent. It has nothing to do with your capabilities. It has to do with people that are assigned to positions that, in my opinion and in my experience, have no business at all being placed in those decision-making processes. Anyway, so, when I finally made it into Imagineering, it wasn't because I went through the regular process. It wasn't because I applied to be an Imagineer and was instantly recognized. It was because honestly, I don't remember who it was. There was another Imagineer there that said, "Have you ever heard of this guy?" That they were aware of, that person was aware of, and somehow told them about me and what I was doing and what I was capable of doing, and it was the trigger that allowed me to go past that resume process of that person that just generally looked at things and decided whether or not you're worthy of being part of the company. And it allowed me to have my interview and present my portfolio and all the things I just talked about in the last episode. And other than that, I don't know that I ever would have been able to get to penetrate that system. So anyway, my first experiences, other than the ones I've already shared, about all the stuff about the status of the company at the time and everything, and there was layoffs and everything, and my coming on board as a new guy was not always welcome because there was a lot of people being laid off and everything. I have to go back to one of the first trips. They had research trips, a lot of research trips. I mean, and for Journey to the Center of the Earth, which I was primarily assigned to, among other things, Disney was really good at having you go and have experiences that allowed you to design things that were, that were reflective of real data and real information and real research. And so I was dealing with an attraction that was a fantasy, yet it had to do with delving deep down into the ground and into caves and into, quote unquote, the center of the earth. So they sent me and the first few people who were assigned also to my project, which was a project manager. Project manager basically just makes sure that you're not going ape shit with your ideas. They watch they're aware of the budget, and all that kind of stuff, and they try to, put a sensible sort of balance into the whole creative process. There was what's called a show producer, and a show producer was somewhere in between a project manager and somebody who kind of understood the creative process. but they were overall responsible for both, so. But other than that, there was me in those positions, and I was on my way. And they suggested different research trips that I could take so that I could better represent the attraction that I was designing. So the first trip, which was really fun, was to go to every cave that you could possibly go to that was commercially available. I went to all these caves that were around there. Now I'm forgetting all the names, but we delved down into these special, sort of. Disney would arrange it, so we got special treatment. We were able to go down into all these different places, all the caves in the U.S. That Carlsbad Caverns and all those things that were available. And it was a trip. I mean, I was going down, in some cases, a mile down below the surface, and I would be able to see stalagmites and stalactites and all these weird formations and stuff that were lit up by the one ranger that we were assigned to that would take us down. We even saw things like, I guess you could call it, the things that were scrolled on the walls of caves 100 years ago by the few explorers that had ever been down there. You could call it ancient graffiti, I guess. And it was amazing. They would scrape on the side of a stalagmite. Stalagmite is one of those pointed things that goes from the ground reaching above, that tapers off like a cone. A stalactite is one that is coming from the ceiling that looks like a drippy, pointed thing. And then there was all these other formations. And we spent a lot of time, literally, deep down under the earth. And I took all kinds of pictures and noted different things, because even though my attraction was a fantasy, I wanted to have some sort of believability as well. And I took this very seriously. And I was afraid of nothing. I went down as deep as I could. I crawled through spaces that were barely large enough for me to squeeze my body through so I could get into a big open cavern that was attached to it. And it was an incredible experience. I was very thankful that the company funded this and supported this, because, I was coming up with this whole attraction on my own, and all these research trips were extremely helpful. They allowed me to experience things that I felt I could translate to a fantasy that had substance and actual scientific basis on, on as the platform. So anyway, after this, and after about 1,000 photos, and you can see this online, there's a number of Disney fan sites that asked me to participate in the whole process of how I developed Journey to the Center of the Earth from the ground up, no pun intended. And you can see them online if you look for some of these things. You'll find them, and it'll show you photos of some of these different experiences as I was going through these caves, spelunking, as they call it, taking lots and lots of photographs. Anyway, so that was the first part of the experience when I was assigned to this attraction, after I had been inducted to be a Disney Imagineer. And at this point, the team I loved, like I said, incredible talent. And I probably will name some of them because I think their names deserve to be said, because they were responsible for what I feel are some of the greatest Disney attractions you will ever experience. And I know most of us here that are listening to this are in the United States. Some of you might not be. But if you go to Japan and see this project, I mean, it was a game changer. It raised the entire bar, believe it or not, on anything that was ever created by the Disney company. And again, the team was unbelievably talented. It was just phenomenal. And I was very proud to be part of it. So after this, I'm going to tell you about the next experience I had, which was when we started to get into my ride. I knew the ride had to be inside of a giant volcano that was huge. It was over 100 feet tall. I have to look and recall how tall the damn thing was, but and it was really well done. The rockwork guys on this thing, Russ and all the guys that were involved in the rockwork, just did a phenomenal job in recreating what really a volcano would look like. They were so educated, and they would talk to me about what here would be basalt, here would be lava flow, here would be, they knew exactly what would really happen, and they knew how to recreate it in cement and other techniques that were incredible. I was just blown away by their abilities. And so, anyway, in the next episode, I'll tell you a little bit about what I had to experience when they finally figured out, the engineers, because we always work together, the engineers had a ride layout figured out. Okay, so they had the track figured out, how it would squeeze into a conical volcano, and presented it to me. I mean, you got to remember, this is not easy stuff because there's columns and there's rebar and cement and everything that has to go into this. So you don't just, lay out a ride track however you feel like it. There's all these engineering issues that have to be taken into account. And so for me as a designer, you have to respect that. So if I see that there is a big iron column that drops right in the middle of an area I once thought was going to be a scene in my ride that was unaffected, I have to figure out how to make that look like it was intentional, like there's a rock form or something that people don't notice is part of the engineering structure of this. And so the next episode, I'm going to share a funny experience when they asked me the question, okay, so at the end of the ride, you're saying that we get shot out of the top of the volcano, right? I said, yeah. I mean, you showed me that we could do that, and that it could feel like we're experiencing almost zero gravity when we get shot out the top, and you'll kind of feel like you're being shot out of the volcano at the end. And they said, okay, yeah, okay, the engineers were like, we can kind of do that, but how long do you want people to feel like they're in zero gravity? How long do you want them to feel like they're suspended in air in your story, in your design? I mean, what would you say? I mean, I've never been in zero gravity, or hadn't been. I didn't know what the hell to say. Yet I was in a meeting where they were looking at me for an answer to work out the engineering aspects of it. So in the next episode, I'll tell you the whole experience I had and how I came up with an answer for that. And it's pretty fun.